Okay, let's continue our side-by-side comparison in this lecture. On eBay, you get to set the term of your listing. You could do a one-day auction, for example. You could do a 3-day, a 5-day, a 7-day, or a 10-day listing, or you could do a good till canceled listing. I believe there's also 30-day listings as well. I forgot to put in there. Good till canceled simply means that your listing will automatically renew every 30 days until you decide to cancel it. So you do have some flexibility with terms of your listing. For example, right now I'm listing a very hot item that's super in demand in one-day auctions. And in one day, the item goes from 99 cents, which is my starting bid, to anywhere from 47 to 67, $71. The most I've made on this item is like $81 or so. That's a one-day auction. Now, for that particular item, it makes a lot of sense because I know it's super in demand. Tons of people are looking for it. Tons of people are bidding on it. And they like the idea that it's a one-day auction because it gives them some, some quick gratification, some instant gratification. Whereas most auctions might be 5 or 7-day auctions. Mine is a one-day auction, and in one day, that price goes from 99 cents to as much as $81. On Amazon, all listings are basically good till canceled. So you list an item, and you list the number of items that you have, and if those items sell out, well, then your listing runs out, right? But if you have a lot of items, and you just keep selling and selling and selling them, then that listing continues until you actually decide to cancel it. On eBay, it's great for high demand, rare items. Things like collectibles, things like antiques, things like pop culture items, rare posters, rare photography, coins, watches, things that people are really looking for in demand and rare items, because you want to use the auction format to get the most money out of those things. You want to get people competing and bidding on those rare items or harder to find items. Whereas on Amazon, it's really more suited to commodity items, more common everyday type items, brand new items, new in the package, things you would probably find at just about any store, retail store, and that kind of thing. In some cases, Amazon is good for rare and hard to find items. This is where it's important to look at both sites when you're about to sell an item and do a comparison. Go look at eBay's completed listings. That means the listings of the items that have already sold. See what that item sold for recently, and then go look at the Amazon catalog and see what that item is selling for right now. It's important also to understand whether that item is likely to be searched for on Amazon. If the item is too unusual or too, let's say, collectible or rare, chances are good people aren't really looking for it on Amazon because they don't think it'll be there. They're more likely to be searching for that item on eBay. So be aware of those two little differences between the two sites. Is that the perception is that eBay is the place you go find rare, unusual, hard to find, or high demand items. And the perception is that on Amazon you go to find just your normal everyday run-of-the-mill retail type items. eBay is a much more casual business atmosphere, even as far as how the company runs things, how strict they are with their rules and regulations. And don't get me wrong, if you break a rule, you could have your account suspended and that kind of thing. As long as you read the rules and regulations, there is a little bit of leeway there with eBay. However, with Amazon, it's a much more formal business atmosphere. It's more formal in terms of their rules and regulations. Amazon does not let you get away with anything. They're very strict, so you have to be aware of that right up front. When you go sell on Amazon, I strongly recommend you read those rules, those rules and regulations. You read the terms and conditions very carefully, and don't ever go beyond that line, okay? Because if you're used to selling on eBay, you might think, well, Amazon will be the same way. They'll let me slide once or twice, or they'll give me a warning if I do something wrong. Amazon is not that flexible. They're much more strict. And this goes to also the buying atmosphere, on the way buyers treat these sites. On eBay, buyers treat their purchases more casually. On Amazon, buyers treat those purchases more seriously. The main reason is the perception that when you're buying on Amazon, a lot of people believe they're buying from Amazon. And so they don't try to pull these kind of sneaky things like refunds and try to return something that they used or whatever. They don't try to pull it as much. They still do, right? But not as much on Amazon as they do on eBay. So from both a seller's perspective as a business owner, eBay's more casual, Amazon's more formal. And from a buyer's perspective, in other words, how the buyers treat their purchases, eBay's more casual and Amazon's more formal. Now on eBay, buyers tend to be less committed as well. And I kind of alluded to this. Whereas on Amazon, buyers are more committed. When they make a purchase, they pay right away. When they make a purchase on eBay, they might linger a few days, they might not pay for a few days, or they may not pay at all because maybe they found the item somewhere else or found it cheaper or whatever. So be aware of that on eBay, buyers are less committed. On Amazon, buyers are more committed. Now on eBay, people leave feedback much more often. It's part of the culture of eBay to leave feedback. So that's a good thing if you're a good seller, you're doing things right. On Amazon, feedback is left less often because it just hasn't ever been a big part of the culture on the Amazon site for people to leave feedback. Now, I remember I was doing a tremendous volume on Amazon about a year and a half ago. There was a point where I was selling as much as $1,000 a day for a short period of time. It was probably about it was about 60 days on Amazon. It just caught this market niche at the right time. It was a timing kind of thing. It only lasted a short time, but I was doing a high volume of sales on Amazon during that two or 3 month period. And during that time, I went to town contacting every single buyer and asking them to leave feedback on my transactions. I'm talking about on Amazon. Because I understood how powerful and how important feedback is on Amazon, I went to town. I went like very, very committed to contacting every single buyer and asking them if they would leave feedback on the transaction. The reason that's important and the reason you want to do that as soon as you start selling on Amazon is because one negative feedback or one lower number, because they give you a grading scale, a lower number feedback can really affect your rating. So you want to do as much as possible to get that rating as high as possible, as soon as possible, so that in the future it doesn't affect your rating and even potentially affect your selling privileges. So be aware of that on Amazon you've got to really fight and work hard to get feedback, and you really should do that as soon as possible. On eBay, the fees are just a little bit lower than on Amazon. On Amazon, the fees are higher. Again, we're talking maybe a 3 to 5% spread in terms of fees. So you've got to determine what makes sense in terms of fees. I just try to buy things at such a high profit that the fees don't matter that much. I'm not looking at nitpicking the fees to see which one is going to be better for me. I try to make anywhere from a 3 to 10 times profit on everything I sell, whether it's eBay or Amazon, doesn't matter. So if the fees are 13% or 15%, that's just not going to make a big difference. eBay runs pay-per-click ads on Google. Have you ever searched for something on Google and you see an eBay ad right there on the right or maybe at the very top, right? Well, Amazon does that too. In fact, Amazon does that quite a bit more. So you benefit from Amazon's Google ads that they're running on your behalf, on behalf of that product listing. So, and then, it gets far more advanced than that. There are ways to get your product up to that level and that kind of thing. We're not going to get into that. But understand that both companies run ads, Google ads, for products. Now, Amazon does it a lot more, and they do it a lot more religiously, and so that's one of the key benefits to selling on Amazon.